What's going on? This is Eric from Thinkwell. What we're gonna do today is I'm gonna roast the same bean, okay? So we're gonna be the same Guatemala Eya, and which is this bean that I feel like on videos and stuff I haven't highlighted it enough, but we sell so much of this coffee, and the Eya, it comes from 3 women producers in Guatemala. It's not a single region. We actually have 3 different regions in this one coffee. These women are doing a great job to make a killer product. And I did get to go and visit Sofia in San Marcos. I've got to see a fair amount of coffee farms, and what she's doing is so awesome. And so it's just great to be able to repurchase. This is our 3rd year purchasing their coffee. So I'm going to roast that and show you that. And I think it's a killer example of the difference that happens between low temp and high temp. And so I'm going to roast the same coffee 2 different ways. We're going to do 2 different, mass, how much goes in each roast. We're going to do 2 different ones. And then the approaches are going to be totally different. So if a person were to want to try both of them, you would definitely notice the difference. And what you're tasting, the only difference you're tasting is from the roast. So I think we should weigh out some coffee, and I think we should get started roasting. All right, all right. A lot of people are using digital controls and programming, that like automation, all that stuff. The way that we do it is totally like trying to be connected to the machine and connected specifically to the environment, and trying to create an environment for the beans which will produce deliciousness. So like it's really easy to put your sort of like to put forward your plan, which I want to use roasting terms like putting your profile and like the way something would automate your coffee, putting that first and having actually what's going on inside of the roaster be secondary. But my approach is the inverse. This batch, these beans, that is primary, and I'm gonna put my attention to it. So I mean, like what that turns into is I'm writing notes like throughout the roast. So you're gonna see me do that, and there just isn't any automation with how we do stuff. So I'm gonna kind of like talk through what I'm thinking and what I'm doing as we go. So low temp, Eya, 12 pounds, and we're gonna start roasting, do a charge temp at 400 degrees. So like the things that I'm thinking right now is like, how much mass do I have here? And I'm gonna do 12 pounds of coffee to start with. Check out our green beans. This is like raw green coffee. Coffee is seeds. They come from cherries on trees. So we're gonna take this and roast it. And I got 12 pounds here, which is like 50% capacity of what the drum can handle. And that ratio really is something that dictates how things are gonna taste and what you can do and how you can maneuver the roast. The other thing that I think about is like airflow. Where am I starting out with airflow, with mass, and flame? So 12 pounds, I'm starting right at about 400 degrees. And I'm gonna just I'm gonna get my flame started first, just so I got something going in the roaster, kind of low. And then we're gonna charge it. Starting the batch. So you can see up here, we got a little hopper. Hopper is empty. And here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna listen and I'm gonna feel. I'm turning the flame up, and I'm adjusting my airflow. And I'm looking for a certain sound and a certain feel. So I'm gonna go about 55% airflow. So a fair amount of airflow. I'm not choking it up at all. I'm leaving it open, and I have really high flame, so I'm going all the way with my flame. 6 inches of flame, 55% airflow. And now, like, so much of what I do is paying attention to observable things, like what does the coffee look like, what does it smell like, what does it sound like as it's roasting, because you can really tell the difference in the air within the drum. As you're roasting, the sound changes, and that sound is from how is air moving, what's the weight of the beans, all that stuff. So I'm listening to that. Now with this roast, what I'm doing is I'm speeding up. I'm going like very fast right away. I'm getting to a very high roast temperature, environmental temperature inside of the drum, and going very high right away. And I'm gonna just slowly bring it back. So 1.5 minutes in, 198 degrees on the bean probe, and 444 on the environmental, which is like tons. I brought down the flame an inch. So I'm gonna just slowly, if you can see the flame dial here, this tells you how many inches of flame I'm using, and I'm just slowly pulling it back, pulling it back, pulling it back. Okay, so my approach right now, why I'm doing this, is I want a ton of heat right away, and then I'm gonna, like, the entire roast from here forward, I'm just gonna be slowly pulling it back bit by bit. Now, I would be pulling it back too fast if I'm watching my environmental temperature suddenly plummet. So I don't want to do that. I want to actually continue to have the beans get pushed. I don't want to stall things out. So it's going to be a fast batch. And we're trying to show the brightness, the vibrancy, the acidity in a good way, you know, like the perceived acidity, the really bright notes. Like what I love about Eya is that, I mean, it's like papaya. When you get it bright and juicy and nice, like the roasting just right, get it sweet, it is like, it's papaya. And then you get these like cocoa bits, kind of cocoa nib flavor with papaya, and it's amazing. So I'm beginning to level out. So my environmental temperature went really high, really fast, and now I'm like leveling it out. And that's great. Now, if I were to like, I'm increasing in my environmental temp, and then I were to like begin to drop it, what that does to the beans, it's as if I was pulling the beans up and then I just stopped pulling them up, and they're gonna like continue to go up and then kind of coast out, which is fine if you're wanting to stretch the roast out. I don't want to stretch this roast out. I'm gonna go for another, I think, 60 degrees with my beans, really increasing, continuing to push, even though it's minor increases at this point, because the environmental temperature went so high so fast. I'm going to continue to have that environmental temperature increase slightly because I want to keep pulling these beans up higher and higher. But at some point, we're gonna top over and we're gonna let them coast out at the very end of the roast. So here we are. We're approaching 4 minutes, 20 seconds, 288 for bean temp, 466 for environmental temp. And we're just about into yellowing, all right? So yellowing, look at how these beans have changed. Oh, they're looking beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so we're right at yellowing, all right? So I'm gonna call it 4 minutes, 44 seconds, 300 degrees for the beans, 468 for the environment, down to 3 inches on the flame. That is my yellowing mark. Whoosh, sweetness, okay. So now I'm thinking about environmental temperature. I'm up to 470 degrees, which is crazy high, okay? Really fast, really high, but now we're starting to taper. I'm waiting to taper. So we're at 316 degrees. I'm gonna wait to 330 on the bean temperature before I start coasting these things out, okay? So I got 10 more degrees here. I'm gonna check my beans. They're looking great. They're starting to get, they kind of turn into what looks like stone, where the surface texture really begins to change. It takes on color. Really, really nice. I mean, I have the airflow open pretty wide. When you have your airflow open, you know You want to do a fast batch, because if you have a lot of airflow for a long batch, you're going to take too much out of the beans. You'll lose a lot of what's going on inside of it. So if you have high airflow like this batch, you are going to want to go fast. So that's what I'm doing, all right? So I might even open up the airflow a little bit more once first crack begins to hit. But right now, I'm just pulling the flame back, pulling the flame back. So we're at 6 minutes and 24 seconds. 349 for the bean and 471 for the environment. And I'm down to 2 inches for the flame. I think we're kind of, it's turning around and starting to go down. So I can smell outside of the machine already that these things are super lively, really taking on heat well. Look at these things, they're just about to go. I can hear the ones in the roaster are going. So 7 minutes, 24 seconds, 372 degrees, 467 for environment. We got first crack going. All right, 2 minutes and 40 seconds. We're in the second phase of the roast, all right? So 240. That means I don't think I'm gonna wanna go over 1 minute and 20 for my development. I wanna keep it no greater than half that second phase. I want my third phase half of my second phase or less. And it's really cracking. It's going, it's going. I'm gonna not worry about my flame. I'm gonna pull it back. I'm gonna open my airflow just a little bit. And now I'm just gonna smell it till I find what I'm looking for. I'm 1 minute in. 390, I think I wanna go to 392, smelling this. Yep. Damn, 8 minutes, 37 seconds. 392 low temp roast. Man, we got 1 minute and 13 seconds on development on the third phase. 1 minute and 13 seconds is pretty nice. It's a good development, like it's not super short. Sometimes you could do, I mean, it's crazy to do something 45 seconds of development, but it depends how long you have that second phase. Second phase of the roast adds so much of the development of the bean that you can have a shorter third phase where 240 for the second phase, 1 minute and 13 seconds, I think, for the second, or for the third. Really nice. Look at those beans. We're gonna let these cool off. I'm gonna finish my notes here. 837, 392, drop. That was the first one, guys. Now I had picked this coffee, like I had said before. I picked it because this coffee is so dynamic. It can do so many different things. And I really wanted to pick 2 roasts of the same bean that can just show how huge and expressive the art of roasting is. I mean, for me, coffee is art. Coffee is art. Coffee is art. That is the framework. Like if you're trying to understand what this thing is, whether you're growing the plants, whether you're roasting it, whether you're brewing it, the framework that best holds what coffee does is art. So that's the idea. And this coffee is so amazing at so many different roasts and roast temps. But I wanted you to see it. I wanted you to experience it. And you can see the development of the bean. You have how, you know, they're cracked on the ends. You have like different variants of color within the same bean. Okay, now keep that in mind, and I'm gonna roast the next batch, and it's gonna look totally different. I'm gonna have a very different approach to this second one. And I'm gonna approach it differently because the flavors that I wanna pull out of this coffee, I want to be totally different. So I'm going for more heavier chocolate tones. Now I don't want like burntness. Even though I have high temp roasts, they're not like super high temp. I mean, the highest temp that I go to is like maybe 428. Maybe I'll go to 430 if I'm feeling really crazy, but I mean, it's really common for roasters to go to 460, 475, you know, go super, super high. Hitting that like 425, 430, I feel like accomplishes the goal of giving people what they're looking for when they want some edge of smokiness and heavier development. So the first thing I'm gonna do that's different is I'm gonna add 16 pounds instead of 12 pounds. That allows the roaster to act differently. I'm gonna have less airflow. Instead of having a ton of airflow, which makes me wanna turn the flame up really high and roast quick, I'm gonna pull the airflow back. I'm gonna keep the flame set lower, and we're gonna stretch the roast out, because I want the cellular body of the bean to develop more. I don't want it to stay tight and hard. I want it to open up and take on the heat more. So when you close your airflow, your flame becomes more efficient. So like 6 inches of flame with a ton of air is less power than 6 inches of flame with less air. So I'm gonna pull the airflow back, do less flame, and we're gonna just like let it sit and take a longer approach to it. And hopefully we're gonna end up with coffee that is big and round and creamy and chocolatey, still has some bright notes present, but a totally different way of roasting than the first one. So, I'm gonna write this down. We're gonna do a high temp Eya. We've got 16 pounds on the roaster. I'm gonna start at 415 degrees to start with. And here we go. My airflow's closed right now. Coffee's in there. Now, again, I'm gonna feel this out. I'm gonna turn this up. There's like a spot where there's not enough gas, spot where there's a little bit more gas. I'm going about 25% on my air. And I'm gonna go .8 inches. So 20% on air, 4.8 inches for flame. Now last roast, I had 4 pounds less in the drum. I had over an inch more of flame, and I had way more air, at 55% or so. So it really pulled the air back. We really pulled the flame back. And if you can see, we're a minute into roasting, and our environmental temperature is still dropping right now. So what's gonna happen is this, okay, there you go. It just turned around. Now this is increasing, okay? So our environment is increasing, 124. We got our bean temperature is still dropping. So this is gonna turn around here in like 12 seconds. This will turn around. Now, some of the things that I look at and care about is like, what's the temperature that this thing's turning around at? Is it in the 180s? Is it in the 170s? Is it in the 190s? Here it goes, it's turning around, 184, 150. Okay, everything is increasing. Our environment is increasing, our beans are increasing, and it's at almost 2 minutes. So what this stuff is telling me when I'm looking at this is it's telling me about the energy and the force that I'm roasting this batch with. And if there's like some approach that I have, it's all about the force of energy. Is there a ton of force or a little bit? And I'm always trying to, like, for me, the parameters around my coffee is I want it to taste balanced. I really want balanced coffee. Even if it's super bright, I want it to be balanced with sweetness. Even if it has some like heavy notes to it, I want it to be balanced. I mean, higher temp roasts, you balance them in a different way. You kind of have like this edge that comes, on low temp roasts, you have an edge, a taste edge that comes from acidity, brightness. And on high temp roasts, you have like an edge that comes from roastiness, like smokiness. You have that there. These are the two edges. And how you balance those edges out is by sweetness. So you're trying to develop, but you have to develop a low temp roast in a very different way than you develop a high temp roast to get sweetness that balances. So when I'm seeking, one, balance is what I'm looking for, and two, I want to like take care of the beans and never be too rough with them. So those two things totally affect, they're like the parameters which I bounce off of when I'm trying to roast coffee. So I'm 3.5 minutes in. I'm going to begin to taper the flame again. All right. So the bean temp is 237. I'm pulling it down, the flame down, and I'm going to go to 4.2 inches. So 348 time, 243 bean, and 417 environment, and I went to 4.2 for my flame setting. I want to stretch the roast. I want to like continue to increase, but really like make a roast that's going to be maybe in the like 13 minutes and 50 seconds, somewhere around there. Like I want to land almost the 14 minutes. It won't be 14-minute roast, but close. And I'm going to get that by how, right now I'm in the first phase. I'm going to get to my end by how I maneuver into the second phase will affect the time at how it ends, all right? So I'm going to make a move with the flame right now. Again, I'm just going to kind of pull it back a little bit, take the edge off of it. So I've dropped down again. I'm going to check these and see where they're at with their color. They're really cooking, but I can tell my airflow is really restricted, I guess is okay. We're right there. So 5 minutes and 37 seconds, 300 degrees for the bean and 442 for the environment. I'm calling that yellow. And that means I'm going to pull this down, pulling it down, the flame. We're gonna just let this thing trickle. And you gotta find it by listening. You have to find it by like feeling how hard is the fuel fighting you, what's going on with the airflow. So right now the environment has stopped from increasing fast. It is still increasing, but much slower now. That's what I want. It's kind of a weird thing because you have these parameters around like environmental temperature or bean temperature or time. And you have, like I have a max in my head. I got 16 pounds in here. I have a max that I can get to for the environmental temp. Well, as I get close to that max, I realize this difference between where I'm sitting at right now with the environmental temp and my maximum, that's essentially the power that I have to move the rest of the roast. So I have to use that the delta between, the difference between those two. I have to really use it in a smart way to continue the momentum to push the beans in the way that I want to push them. So I'm kind of always like looking looking ahead and I'm thinking about my parameters and I'm thinking of what we just did and I'm adjusting my flame accordingly. And then you also have to factor things in like when coffee enters first crack, it begins exothermy. It pushes out tons of gas, which drastically affects the environment. So like airflow. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna crack the airflow open just a little bit right now. Just a little bit. And it's actually gonna like make first crack. If you do this, what I'm doing right now, it's like inducing first crack. First crack will begin because I'm opening up the airflow and I'm just cracking it a little bit. And here, we're fully in first crack. So 8 minutes, 34 seconds. 373 for the bean temp and 463 for the environmental temp. And we're first cracks. So on a higher temp roast, if my second phase was 3 minutes, my third phase can't be more than 3 minutes. I would like it to be, let's say, between 2 and 2.5. If I had a 4-minute second phase, I could be like 3 to 3.5 minutes. You have them in relation to each other and in a ratio, and I try to not have too many rules around coffee. Like there's a lot of ways that coffee does what it's gonna do, and I just wanna be there to like give it an environment to do it. But there are some things in general that I hold to, like third phase I don't want longer than second phase. It just seems like you lose too much of what's going on inside of the bean. I just pull the flame back just over the cusp that now the environmental temperature is gonna go down, and I'm gonna let the intrinsic heat and momentum that the beans have continue. We're over 400 degrees now, so I'm in the last 20 degrees of this roast. I think we're gonna go over 420 degrees. Lots of smell, lots of character. Really nice. This is great, man. There's like there's certain development and certain flavors and aromas that you cannot get at a low temperature. And man, this is a 418. It's speaking to me, it wants 418. All right, 10 minutes, 55 seconds, still way faster than I was saying, about a 13-minute batch, 14-minute batch, but like I said, I gotta let the batch be its own thing. This batch is really nice and smooth, but man, look at that color, look at that development, totally different from the first batch. Very different smells. In the cup, they're gonna have the body, the mouthfeel, the flavors are gonna be as if you're drinking two completely different coffees. And what's cool is it's the same coffee. It's the same exact ingredient roasted in two different ways for your drinking enjoyment. Yeah, sweet. Sweet, okay, well, if you guys have any questions or any comments or whatever, feel free to send us some messages in the DMs or say hi, throw a comment on or whatever. We'd love to hear from you, and maybe we'll see you next time.